I am Aurora, 28 years old, and yesterday marked a turning point in my life. I became a millionaire. My Aunt Livia bequeathed me everything, $2 million, her grand Victorian mansion, and her shares in the business. I was still overwhelmed with grief when the last people I ever anticipated showed up, my parents. The very same parents who left me 15 years ago without a word. They greeted me with smiles as if no time had passed. "We are your guardians," my mother said sweetly. Before I could even react, my lawyer walked in. The moment they laid eyes on him, their faces went ghostly pale. But let me rewind a bit so you can grasp how surreal this moment was. I remember when my life was quite ordinary, back when I was 13. We lived in a simple 2-bedroom apartment. My parents appeared to love me. Dad worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, while Mom taught 3rd grade at the nearby elementary school. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough. Friday movie nights with microwave popcorn. Summer camping trips in our second-hand tent. Christmas mornings filled with hot chocolate and cinnamon rolls. Yet, there were signs I was too young to recognize. The quiet arguments behind closed doors that intensified each week. The mysterious phone calls Dad always took outside. The long overtime shifts that brought him home reeking of cigarettes and alcohol instead of car polish. My father had always enjoyed an occasional poker game with friends. It seemed innocent at first. Then his friendly games turned into weekend trips to Atlantic City. I overheard my mother crying one night, pleading with him to stop before we lost everything. He assured her he would, but his promises were like loose change, easily spent and quickly forgotten. Mom changed as well. Her bright smiles faded. She called in sick to work more frequently, spending days in bed with the curtains drawn. The refrigerator became empty, and when I inquired about grocery shopping, she would snap at me to make do with what we had. Some days, she would look at me as if she were trying to memorize my face, then suddenly burst into tears and lock herself in the bathroom. I aimed for perfection. I maintained my grades, tidied up the apartment without being asked, and never complained about wearing the same clothes until they were worn out. I believed that if I could just be good enough, everything would return to normal. The day they left is etched in my memory with painful clarity. It was a Tuesday in October, unusually chilly for early fall. I woke up late because my mom hadn't come to remind me about school. The apartment felt different right away, too quiet, too empty. Their bedroom door was open, which was odd since my mom always kept it closed on her bad days. The closet doors were ajar too, with half the hangers empty. Their dresser drawers revealed only a few forgotten socks. On the kitchen counter, I discovered a single-page note in my mother's handwriting. "Aurora, we cannot do this anymore. Your Aunt Livia will take care of you. We are sorry." Just like that, 13 years condensed into 16 words. I called my mother's cell phone over and over, each unanswered ring tightening my chest. I tried my father's number, but it had already been disconnected. I rummaged through address books, emergency contacts, anything that might help me grasp what was happening. I had only met Aunt Livia twice before. She was my father's older sister, a strict businesswoman living in another state. She never married, never had children, and according to my parents, never approved of their way of life. I had no means to contact her and no clue if she even knew what my parents had done. I spent that night alone, terrified to tell anyone what had happened. What if they placed me in foster care? What if my parents returned and I was gone? I lived on cereal and cried myself to sleep on the living room couch, waiting by the phone. On the second day, our landlord knocked, demanding the overdue rent. When I mentioned that my parents were away, he looked at me with suspicion and brought up the idea of contacting social services. On the third day, I decided to reach out to my school counselor, who promptly got Child Protective Services involved. The social worker who arrived, Miss Hayes, had gentle eyes and a voice that felt as comforting as a warm blanket. She made phone calls, pulled some strings, and eventually found Aunt Livia. Your niece has been abandoned, I overheard Miss Hayes say on the phone. The options are foster care or... There was a lengthy pause. I know this is sudden, but she has no one else. Another pause. Tomorrow morning would be ideal. She cannot remain in the apartment alone for another night. Aunt Livia showed up the next day in a shiny black car that seemed out of place in our neighborhood. She was dressed in a charcoal gray suit and pearls, her silver-streaked hair neatly pulled back into a tight bun. When she saw me, her expression was not one of happiness or even sympathy. It was a mix of determination and resignation. Pack what you can carry, she instructed, her tone clipped yet not unkind. The rest can be sent later. The social workers took care of the paperwork while I packed a single suitcase with clothes and stuffed my backpack with photo albums and my favorite books. I left behind my childhood bedroom, where glow-in-the-dark stars still clung to the ceiling. The journey to Aunt Livia's house took 3 hours. She didn't say much, only asking if I was hungry or needed a bathroom break. I gazed out the window, watching my world literally fade away in the rearview mirror. The legal guardianship process was quite complex. It involved court appearances, interviews with judges, more social workers, and psychological evaluations. Throughout it all, Aunt Livia remained resolute, if not particularly warm. She hired top-notch lawyers and never once suggested sending me somewhere else, even when the process became lengthy and challenging. My parents never attended any of the hearings. The court attempted to find them in order to officially terminate their parental rights, but they appeared to have completely disappeared. It felt as though they had never been there at all. The abandonment created scars that therapy could only somewhat mend. For years, I would awaken in the middle of the night, convinced I had heard the front door creak open, believing they had come back to clarify that it was all a dreadful mistake. I penned letters that I never sent because I lacked an address to send them to. I would scan crowds in shopping malls, certain I had caught a glimpse of my mother's silhouette or my father's unique gait. The therapist, Aunt Livia, who hired Dr. Freeman, helped me realize that their departure had nothing to do with me. Adults make decisions based on their own issues. She would often say, children tend to blame themselves as it gives them a sense of control. If it were your fault, you could fix it, but this was never yours to mend, Aurora. Those logical words were ones my heart resisted accepting for many years. As time went on, my frantic search began to wane. By the time I turned 18, I had ceased looking back every time someone called my name in public. By 20, I had stopped crafting imaginary dialogues for our reunion. By 25, I had come to terms with the fact that the parents I once knew were truly gone forever. Throughout all of this, Aunt Livia was not warm or affectionate, but she was reliable and steadfast. She never broke a promise, never missed an appointment, and always provided what I needed. It was a different kind of love than what I had lost, but it was genuine. Moving into Aunt Vivian's house felt like being relocated to a different country. Her Victorian mansion was set on 2 acres of beautifully landscaped grounds, enclosed by a wrought iron fence. My bedroom was larger than our entire previous apartment, adorned with heavy velvet curtains and an antique 4-poster bed that made me feel as if I had stepped into a historical drama. The rules were plentiful and strictly upheld: breakfast at 7 sharp, beds made before leaving for school, and no shoes on the hardwood floors. Daily piano practice for an hour, regardless of whether I had talent or not. Homework was to be done at the desk, not on beds or couches. Dinner discussions had to include at least one topic about current events and one personal achievement. No television was allowed on weeknights. I broke every rule during the first month, testing boundaries, perhaps unconsciously wishing to be sent away before facing abandonment again. However, Aunt Livia never threatened to get rid of me. Instead, each rule violation came with logical consequences. If I was late to breakfast, I would miss it and be reminded that the kitchen closed at 7:30. If my homework was incomplete, my weekend plans would be cancelled until I finished my assignments to her satisfaction. Yet, behind her strict demeanor, I sometimes caught glimpses of something unexpected, like when she found me crying over a photo of my parents on their wedding day. Instead of scolding me for dwelling on the past, she quietly handed me a handkerchief and sat next to me until my tears subsided. Or when I failed a math test despite hours of studying, she hired a tutor instead of criticizing my intelligence. Aunt Livia had built her wealth from a modest inheritance, transforming a local houseware store into a chain of 30 upscale home decor boutiques across 3 states. She worked long hours but always came home for dinner, often bringing paperwork to finish afterward. On weekends, she took me along to business meetings, expecting me to observe and learn. "Watch how people negotiate," she would say. "Notice who speaks first, who concedes points, and who maintains eye contact." Business is human psychology applied to commerce. Education was a cornerstone of her values. When the local public school fell short, she enrolled me in Westfield Academy, a private school known for its small classes and high expectations. The transition was tough. My previous school had not equipped me for the academic challenges, and the other students came from affluent families with vastly different life experiences. At first, I found the coursework challenging, spending countless hours at my desk trying to catch up. There were nights when I felt like giving up, convinced that I would never fit into this world of privilege and preparation. However, Aunt Livia refused to accept defeat. One night, as I cried over geometry proofs, she told me, "Your circumstances changed without any action on your part. But how you respond to those circumstances is completely up to you. You can either seize this opportunity or let it slip away. The choice is yours, but I must warn you, I do not invest in lost causes." Although it wasn't the comforting words I longed for, her straightforward pragmatism somehow gave me strength. I decided to hire a peer tutor with my allowance and formed study groups with my classmates. By my junior year, I had made it onto the honor roll. However, the college application process brought a new wave of stress. I wanted to go to the state university where many of my friends were headed, but Aunt Livia encouraged me to aim for more prestigious institutions. "Your friends aren't considering their futures," she said, "they're focused on maintaining their social lives. You need to think strategically about your career." This difference in perspective led to our biggest argument. I accused her of trying to control my life, and she retorted that I was wasting my potential out of fear of stepping outside my comfort zone. "I never asked to be your project," I yelled. "And I never asked to be your guardian," she replied coolly. Yet here we are. "I'm trying to provide you with options that your parents never had." Her words silenced me, and in the ensuing silence, she did something unexpected. She shared stories about my father's childhood. "Your father was incredibly bright," she said gently. "He could solve complex math problems in his head, but our parents couldn't afford to send him to college. Instead, he worked at a gas station while I received the scholarship. He held on to resentment for years and turned to gambling in hopes of getting rich quickly since education was no longer an option for him. Your mother was equally bright but limited by her circumstances. I am determined to break that cycle for you." It was the first occasion she had talked about my parents without any judgment or anger. This provided me with a glimpse into their lives that I had never experienced before, and it helped me comprehend her seemingly cold determination to push me academically. I applied to 7 schools and got accepted into 5. In the end, I decided on Northwestern University to pursue business and marketing. Aunt Livia covered the tuition without any complaints, even though I was aware it was a significant amount. College introduced me to new freedoms and challenges. I joined various clubs, made friends from different backgrounds, and uncovered talents I never knew I had. I discovered a flair for design and marketing strategy that complemented the financial skills Aunt Vivian had taught me. My summers were spent interning at her corporate office, where I learned every facet of the business, from inventory management to vendor relations. Our relationship transformed during those college years. The physical distance somehow fostered emotional closeness. Our Sunday phone calls became less formal, sometimes even filled with laughter. When I graduated with honors, the pride in her eyes was clear, although she kept her public display of emotion to a firm handshake and a single nod. After graduation, I moved back to her home and took on the role of marketing director for her company. We established a comfortable routine, 2 independent women sharing space and occasional meals. I dated from time to time, but Aunt Livia subtly discouraged any relationship that might divert my focus from career advancement. Then, 2 years ago, everything shifted again. Aunt Livia was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The prognosis was grim from the start, but she faced her illness with the same disciplined determination she applied to everything else. "We all die," she said when I broke down after the diagnosis. "The only variables are when and how we use the time before that happens." She continued to work for as long as she could, gradually passing on responsibilities to me as her strength diminished. Our roles slowly reversed. I took on the role of managing medication schedules, organizing doctor visits, and ensuring she had the right nutrition. In her last months, Aunt Livia showed a surprising gentleness. One night, as I assisted her into bed, she held my hand with unexpected firmness. "You were the daughter I never let myself have," she murmured. "Bringing you into my life was the best choice I ever made." She passed away peacefully in her sleep 8 months after her diagnosis. The funeral was intimate, mostly attended by business colleagues and a few distant family members. Standing by her grave, I realized she had truly become my parent in every significant way. The sorrow was sometimes overwhelming. The house felt so empty. I often found myself listening for her footsteps or saving articles I thought she would enjoy. Yet, I kept the business running as she had taught me, honoring her memory through my actions rather than just words. I never anticipated seeing my biological parents again until the day of the will reading turned everything upside down. 3 weeks after the funeral, I received an official letter from Harold Lawson, Aunt Livia's attorney for over 3 decades. The will reading was set for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. at his downtown office. The letter indicated that all interested parties would be there, but I assumed it would just be me and maybe some business associates or charitable groups Aunt Vivian might have included. Lawson was a distinguished gentleman in his 70s, sporting a full head of silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses that he looked over rather than through. His office had the scent of leather and old books, with dark wood paneling and a large desk that had likely seen countless life-changing documents signed. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a navy blue suit that Aunt Vivian would have approved of. Lawson welcomed me warmly, offering his condolences once more before noting that we were waiting for a few others to arrive before starting. I found myself seated in one of the leather chairs, idly flipping through a business magazine without really taking in any of the information. When the door swung open, I looked up, anticipating the arrival of one of Vivian's executives. It felt as if time had frozen. In the doorway stood 2 individuals I had convinced myself I might never encounter again. My parents. My father appeared to have aged significantly. His once thick, dark hair was now sparse and completely gray. Deep lines etched from his nose to his mouth, and his shoulders drooped forward as if burdened by an unseen weight. He had put on at least 50 pounds. His previously athletic build was now soft and rounded. My mother looked even more transformed. Her blonde hair was styled in a harsh cut that did not complement her face, which had become thin and angular. Dark circles lingered under her eyes, and when she smiled, it didn't quite reach them. She wore a dress that might have been stylish a decade ago, and she gripped her purse with a white-knuckled intensity. "Ella," my father said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "Look at you, all grown up." They approached me, and I found myself rising on shaky legs. My mother reached out for a hug that I couldn't reciprocate. I stood rigidly as her arms wrapped around me. The scent of her perfume was both familiar and strange. "We have been trying to find you," my mother said, stepping back to take a good look at me. "You resemble your aunt so much now. So sophisticated. How did you know about today?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding odd to my own ears. We saw the obituary in the newspaper, my father explained, trying for a sad smile. We've been keeping an eye on the family from a distance. We knew you were with Vivian. Naturally. Naturally, they had known where I was all these years and had never once reached out. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Please sit down, Lawson interjected, motioning toward the chairs. We have one more person joining us before we begin. An older woman, whom I recognized as Vivian's housekeeper, Mrs. Grayson, entered the room. She had been with Aunt Livia for over 20 years and had always been kind to me in her reserved manner. She gave me a sympathetic nod before settling into a chair by the window, trying to distance herself from my parents. As we waited for Lawson to start, my parents engaged in small talk that felt almost surreal. We now live in Arizona, my mother mentioned. The weather is better for your father's arthritis. My father chimed in, saying he manages a convenience store. It's nothing extravagant, but it covers our expenses. I nodded absent-mindedly, struggling to come up with replies. Inside, my feelings were a storm of anger, confusion, pain, and a dangerous hint of longing, all vying for control. Lawson cleared his throat and opened a hefty folder. We are gathered here to execute the last will and testament of Vivian Eleanor Hughes, he stated formally. I will outline the key provisions before distributing copies to the relevant parties. My parents leaned in slightly, a barely noticeable shift that made their presence at this reading unmistakably clear. They weren't here for closure or to reconnect, they were here for money. Lawson adjusted his glasses. To my niece, Aurora Margaret Winters, I bequeath my entire estate, which includes, but is not limited to, the property located at 347 Lakeview Drive, all its contents, and the adjacent 2 acres of land. My complete ownership share of Hughes Home Collections, valued at around $12 million, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and retirement funds amounting to about $2 million in liquid assets, my personal belongings, including jewelry, artwork, and vehicles, as well as all intellectual property associated with my business endeavors. The room went quiet. I had anticipated inheriting something, but the magnitude of the bequest was staggering. Aunt Livia had been affluent, but I hadn't realized just how significant her estate was. My father cleared his throat softly. Excuse me, Mr. Lawson. Is there anything else? Lawson peered at him over his glasses. There are some smaller bequests to longtime employees, he replied, nodding toward Mrs. Grayson. And comprehensive guidelines concerning charitable contributions to be made each year from the business profits. However, the majority of the estate is allocated to Aurora, as I have mentioned. My mother's smile became more strained. Well, this is quite a burden for someone so young, she remarked, giving my hand a pat that felt more intrusive than loving. Thankfully, as her parents, we are able to provide assistance. Lawson raised an eyebrow but remained silent. Legally speaking, my father interjected, with an air of forced nonchalance, since Aurora was a minor when Vivian took her in, and there was never an official termination of our parental rights, we still hold her legal guardianship. We would gladly help manage these assets until Aurora gains more life experience. The wave of panic that surged through me was intense and immediate. After 15 years of silence, they sought to take control of my inheritance. I opened my mouth to protest, but Lawson interjected first. I think there is some misunderstanding regarding the legal situation here, he said in a calm tone. Perhaps we should continue this conversation tomorrow when I can have all the necessary documents ready. Shall we say 2 o'clock? My parents exchanged a quick look before my father nodded. That sounds good. We are staying at the Westmont Hotel downtown. We could meet for lunch before that, Aurora, to catch up properly. Before I could reply, Lawson stood up. If you will excuse us, I need a few moments with Aurora to discuss some confidential matters related to her immediate responsibilities. My parents hesitated, clearly unwilling to leave without solidifying their position. We will see you tomorrow then, sweetheart, my mother said again, reaching out for a hug. I could not return it. We have so much to discuss. As they gathered their coats, my father handed me a business card with their cell phone numbers written on the back. Call any time, he said. Day or night. We have 15 years to make up for. The door had barely closed behind them when I slumped back into my chair, my hands trembling. They can't really have any legal claim, can they? I asked Lawson. The attorney's face was serious. I think you should brace yourself for a tough conversation tomorrow. He said, your aunt foresaw this possibility, but I need some time to arrange her backup plans. Mrs. Grayson came over before leaving, gently squeezing my shoulder. Your aunt was a wise woman, she said softly. Trust that she would never leave you unprotected. I left the office in a daze, ignoring 3 calls from my mother before I even got to my car. The childhood dream of my parents' return had finally come true, but instead of happiness, all I felt was anxiety. Despite my better judgment, I agreed to meet my parents for dinner that evening. Lawson had suggested waiting until our meeting the next day, but a part of me craved answers only they could give. I picked a public restaurant, an upscale Italian place Aunt Livia had liked for business meetings. They were already seated when I got there, my father standing to pull out my chair with exaggerated politeness. My mother had put on fresh makeup and styled her hair, looking more like the woman I remembered. We ordered a bottle of Pinot Noir, my father said. I remember your mother always enjoyed it. I don't drink wine, I replied, asking for water instead. It was a small boundary to set, but it felt crucial to make it clear I was not the child they had abandoned. Awkward small talk filled the first 20 minutes. They inquired about my education, my job, my friends. I gave brief answers while examining their faces for hints of the parents I once adored. We owe you an explanation, my mother finally said, reaching for my hand across the table. I kept mine firmly around my water glass. What we did was wrong. We know that we were in a terrible situation, my father continued. I had gambling debts that dangerous people were pursuing. Your mother was battling severe depression. We convinced ourselves you would be better off with Vivian. My mother mentioned that she had financial stability. We had nothing to give but chaos. You had each other, I said softly. That was all I desired. My father gazed down at his plate. I sought help for my addiction. I've been sober for 8 years now. Eventually, your mother found the right medication. We have created a modest yet stable life. We contemplated reaching out numerous times, my mother said, her eyes filling with tears. But we felt ashamed. As time went on, it became increasingly difficult to figure out how to close that gap. You mentioned you were aware I was with Aunt Livia. I asked, how? They exchanged a look before my father replied. We contacted social services about 6 months after we left. They confirmed you were with family and thriving. We checked in every few years after that. The thought that they had made these occasional inquiries without ever trying to reach out made my stomach churn. They had eased their guilt just enough to continue with their lives. We regret our choice every single day, my mother asserted, a tear rolling down her cheek. Seeing you now, successful and beautiful, it breaks my heart that we missed out on watching you grow up. The waiter brought our entrees, providing a brief break from the emotional strain. Once he left, my father redirected the conversation. Livia did well by you, he remarked, twirling pasta on his fork. Better than we could have, and now she has set you up for life. The house alone must be worth $2 million in today's market, my mother added nonchalantly, along with the business. It can be overwhelming for someone your age. I have been assisting in running the business for years, I replied flatly. Naturally, my father said in a comforting tone. But there's a distinction between assisting and having full responsibility. The legal matters alone can be intimidating, not to mention the tax implications. My mother interjected. Estate taxes can be crippling without the right guidance. I observed them closely, noticing how they shifted between emotional appeals and financial worries. The pattern was becoming evident. "We could assist you," my father suggested. "We've faced our challenges, but we've gained a lot of knowledge about financial management through tough experiences." That's an intriguing viewpoint from someone who left his family due to gambling debts. I noticed my father flinched but quickly regained his composure. Those experiences imparted valuable lessons to me. I now know all the traps to steer clear of. My mother leaned in. "We own a modest condo in Phoenix with a second mortgage. Medical expenses have been tough. Your father's arthritis treatment isn't fully covered by insurance. What exactly are you requesting?" I asked straightforwardly. They appeared taken aback by my frankness. It was another reminder that they were dealing with an adult, not the child they had abandoned. "We aren't asking for anything," my father said, lacking conviction. "We simply want to be part of your life again and help if we can. However, if you wanted to assist your parents in getting back on their feet, that would be a blessing," my mother added. "Perhaps pay off our mortgage. $70,000 would completely transform our lives. Plus the medical expenses," my father reminded her. "An additional $30,000 would take care of those." I leaned back, a cold clarity washing over me. "So, $100,000 would resolve your issues?" They nodded eagerly. "And what about my issues?" I inquired. The 15 years of questioning what I did wrong, the therapy costs, the nightmares. "What is the cost for those?" My mother's tears began to flow freely. "We understand that money can't mend the emotional scars. We just want a chance to be a family again." "A family that starts with a financial transaction," I remarked. My father's expression hardened slightly. "You must understand our situation. We made a grave mistake." "Yes, but Vivian was my sister. That fortune originated from our family. Our parents provided her with the seed money to launch her business while I received nothing." "So, you believe you have a right to it?" I clarified. "Not a right," he corrected himself. "Just a desire to be included. We are your parents, Aurora. Blood ties mean something." I thought about Aunt Livia, who demonstrated through her actions rather than words what genuine parental love truly looked like. "Yes," I concurred. "Blood ties hold significance, but actions carry even greater weight." The remainder of the dinner unfolded in a similar manner, oscillating between emotional manipulation and financial suggestions. By the time dessert arrived, they had brought up several other debts and hinted that I might consider adding them to my team at the company with generous salaries. As we stepped outside the restaurant, my mother embraced me once more, whispering, "Reflect on what family genuinely means, sweetheart. We all make mistakes." I drove home enveloped in a haze of confusion. Their narrative contained elements of truth. I recalled my mother's struggles with depression, my father's frequent absences, yet something about their explanation felt rehearsed, their timing too convenient, their immediate focus on finances unsettling. Upon arriving home, I discovered a message on my answering machine from an unknown number. "Miss Winters, this is Sandra Kelly. I worked for your parents 15 years ago at First National Bank. I noticed their names in connection with Vivian Hughes's obituary and felt it necessary to reach out. Please call me before you make any agreements with them. There are things you should be aware of." That night, sleep eluded me. I delved into guardianship laws until my eyes ached. Based on everything I could uncover, my parents' claims appeared weak at best. I had been an adult for many years now. But why did Lawson seem worried? What documentation was he compiling? Around 3:00 a.m., I found myself in Aunt Vivian's study, now mine, rummaging through her meticulously organized files. In a locked drawer I had never opened before, I discovered a folder simply labeled Winters. Inside was a history I had never been aware of. The next day, I arrived at Lawson's office, equipped with the contents of Vivian's private file and my own sleepless research. My parents were already present, accompanied by a slender man with slicked back hair, who introduced himself as Gerald Hoffman, their attorney. Just a precaution, my father explained with a tight smile. Legal matters can get complicated. Lawson greeted them cordially, but without warmth. His assistant brought in a cart loaded with several expandable files and a laptop. The atmosphere felt more like preparation for battle than a family discussion. Before we begin, Lawson said, I should clarify my role here. I am the executive of Vivian Hughes's estate and her personal attorney for the past 32 years. I also serve as Aurora's attorney through provisions made by Miss Hughes. Hoffman leaned forward. My clients are concerned about their daughter's sudden inheritance of such substantial assets. As her legal guardians, they have a responsibility to ensure proper management of these resources. Lawson nodded thoughtfully. That is precisely what I wished to address today. There seems to be some confusion about legal status. He opened the first file. Let me clarify the history as documented. He removed several official-looking documents. When Aurora came into Vivian's care, temporary guardianship was established through family court. Social services documented multiple attempts to contact you both regarding permanent arrangements. My mother frowned. We were dealing with serious issues, moving frequently. Indeed, Lawson continued. After 6 months of failed contact attempts, the court scheduled a hearing regarding permanent guardianship. Notices were sent to your last known addresses and published in appropriate legal journals. My father shifted uncomfortably. We never received any notices. Interestingly, Lawson said someone did contact the court claiming to represent you. He removed another document. A man named Louis Barker appeared with a signed affidavit allegedly from both of you consenting to the permanent guardianship transfer to Vivian Hughes. My parents exchanged a quick glance that confirmed my suspicions before my father spoke. We never authorized anyone to represent us. Those signatures must be forgeries. Lawson adjusted his glasses. Miss Hughes had similar concerns at the time. She hired a private investigator to locate you and confirm your intentions directly. He opened another file containing reports with photographs. The investigator documented Mr. Winter's activities at various casinos in Nevada during this period. He also photographed Mrs. Winters working as a cocktail waitress in the same establishments. When approached about Aurora's situation, you both explicitly confirmed your desire to terminate parental responsibilities. The color drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw tightened. Furthermore, Lawson continued relentlessly. The investigator documented a payment of $15,000 from Louis Barker to Mr. Winters the day after those affidavits were signed. That was an unrelated business transaction, my father protested weakly. Lawson ignored the interruption. Miss Hughes continued annual investigations to monitor your situations and determine if reconnection would be beneficial for Aurora. I have reports spanning 15 years documenting continued gambling activity, multiple evictions, job terminations, and several incidents involving collection agencies. He turned to another section. Particularly noteworthy are these documented attempts by Mrs. Winters to contact Aurora when she turned 18. He pushed a report toward me. 3 occasions when Mrs. Winters called Livia's home but hung up without speaking. And this email sent to Aurora's college account, but never opened due to incorrect addressing. I stared at the evidence of these half-hearted attempts at contact, feeling a strange mix of pain and vindication. Most significantly, Lawson said, removing a sealed envelope, Vivian left this letter to be opened in exactly this circumstance. He handed it to me. The envelope bore my name in Aunt Livia's precise handwriting. Perhaps you would like to read it privately, Lawson suggested. I shook my head and broke the seal, unfolding several pages covered in familiar script. My beloved Aurora, I read aloud with a steadiness in my voice that surprised me. If you are seeing this, it means I have passed away and your parents have unexpectedly come back into your life. This is not mere chance. Throughout the years, I have recorded numerous occasions where they tried to extract money from me by using you as leverage. My mother let out a small sound of protest, but I pressed on with my reading. 6 months after you moved in with me, your father reached out, demanding $50,000 to avoid contesting the guardianship arrangement. I paid it, despite my better judgment, fearing that a custody battle would only traumatize you more. 3 years later, he came back asking for more, claiming that gambling debts had put his life at risk. I refused and instead hired security for our home. I glanced up briefly to see my father staring at the floor. When you turned 16, your mother called, saying she had cancer and needed money for treatment. My investigator confirmed that this was false. When you received your college acceptance, they somehow got your email address and asked for tuition money to start fresh and rebuild their relationship with you. I blocked these messages to shield you from their manipulation. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself to keep going. I have never shared these things with you because I wanted you to heal without the burden of additional betrayal. I hoped they would eventually seek help and become the parents you truly deserved. Unfortunately, that has not happened. Now, they will likely try to access your inheritance through guilt, legal threats, or emotional manipulation. The room was completely silent as I turned to the last page. Lawson has all the necessary documentation to legally protect you. The guardianship was changed to legal adoption when you turned 16, although I kept my surname and did not change yours, hoping that reconciliation might someday be possible. You have been legally my daughter since then, and they have no claim over you or your inheritance. I had to take a moment to process this revelation. Aunt Livia had taken me in, something I had never realized. Whatever you choose regarding your biological parents is entirely up to you. However, please ensure you safeguard your financial future. Being related by blood does not grant anyone the benefits of our hard work or excuse their past neglect. Keep in mind that family is formed through ongoing care and sacrifice, not just genetics. I am proud of the person you have grown into. Trust your instincts. All my love, Livia. I carefully refold the letter, emotions too intricate to describe overwhelming me. Lawson cleared his throat. I have the adoption documents here, legally binding and properly processed through family court. I also possess records of the numerous financial requests mentioned in the letter. He turned to my shocked parents. Furthermore, Miss Hughes included a specific clause in her will stating that any legal challenge to these arrangements would lead to the entire estate being transferred to a charitable foundation for abandoned children. There would be nothing left for anyone to claim. Their attorney, appearing increasingly uneasy, leaned in to whisper something to my father. We had no idea about any adoption, my father said, his voice empty. We were informed it was only temporary guardianship. By whom? Lawson asked sharply. By social services, my mother insisted. All communications are documented in these files, Lawson replied, tapping a thick folder, which includes your signed consent forms. My father's expression darkened with rage. This is absurd. You bribed us and took our daughter. I believe the security cameras in this office are recording that outburst, Lawson remarked calmly, which directly contradicts your earlier statement about forgery and could be seen as an admission of accepting payment to transfer parental rights. My father stood up suddenly. This is not finished. We have rights. Dad, I said, the word feeling odd in my mouth after so many years. I found Vivian's file last night. I know about the other families as well. His expression wavered. What other families? The Petersons in Colorado, the Galinskas in Oregon, and 3 other families you contacted, all claiming to be relatives of recently deceased wealthy individuals. It appears that your pattern has been to abandon children and then attempt to profit from their inheritances for quite some time. My mother began to cry genuinely. Now, that is simply not true. We made mistakes with you, but we would never save it. I suddenly interrupted, worn out by their act. Vivian documented everything. She even has recordings of your phone calls where you demanded money. Did you honestly think she would leave me unprotected? My father's anger shifted to calculation. Listen, Aurora, there has been a grave misunderstanding. We can resolve this as a family. There's no need for lawyers and accusations. I believe we are finished here, I said, rising. Lawson, is there anything else I need to do legally today? No, he replied. The estate transfers to you without issues. Your parents have no legal grounds to contest the will or the adoption. Then I would like them to leave. Aurora, please, my mother pleaded. Just give us a chance to explain. 15 years, I said softly. You had 15 years to explain. Instead, you waited until money was involved. That tells me everything I need to know. Lawson pressed a button on his desk, and 2 security officers appeared at the door. These gentlemen will escort you out, he informed my parents. Any further communication with Miss Winters should go through my office. You cannot do this, my father yelled, his face reddening. She is our daughter. No, I corrected him. I was your daughter. Now I belong to Vivian's. And she taught me to see value beyond price tags. As security led them toward the elevator, my mother looked back. This is not who we raised you to be. We gave you life. And Livia gave me everything else, I replied, including protection from those who view relationships as transactions. After they left, I sank into a chair, emotional exhaustion washing over me. Lawson chose to sit next to me instead of behind his large desk. You should be aware, he said softly, that I am also your godfather. Vivian asked me to take on that role when she adopted you. I made a promise to her that I would keep looking out for your best interests after she was gone. This unexpected link to Aunt Livia brought fresh tears to my eyes. Why had she never mentioned the adoption to me? She was concerned that you might think she was trying to replace your parents instead of just legally protecting you. She wanted you to develop your own views about family without her influence. I confessed that she had influenced me more than anyone else, simply by being consistent when no one else was. Lawson nodded in understanding. We can pursue restraining orders if you want. Considering their financial motives and past behavior, a judge would probably approve them. Yes, I concluded. I believe that would be the best course of action. As I exited his office, I felt both exhausted and oddly free. The dream of my parents returning, which had haunted me for years, had turned out to be nothing like my childhood fantasies, but exactly as Aunt Livia had foreseen. She had shielded me one last time. Even with the restraining order being processed, my parents showed up at Aunt Vivian's house, which is now my house, that evening. I noticed their rental car pull into the driveway while I was getting dinner ready. For a brief moment, I thought about not answering the door, but a strange sense of calm had enveloped me since my meeting with Lawson. I needed this final confrontation. They rang the doorbell over and over until I finally opened the door, but they stayed on the threshold, preventing their entry. You cannot be here, I stated firmly. A restraining order has been filed. We are still your parents, my father yelled, his earlier composure completely lost. You owe us the courtesy of a conversation without lawyers and security guards. I owe you nothing, I responded calmly. However, I will give you 5 minutes to say whatever you need to say. After that, you must leave before I call the police. My mother pushed past me into the foyer, her eyes scanning the interior of the home. We just want to understand why you are being so distant, she said. We made a grave mistake years ago, but we are trying to make things right now. By trying to take control of my inheritance, I asked. That's an intriguing way to make amends. My father followed her inside despite my protests. That woman turned you against us, he spat. Livia always held resentment towards me. She used you to hurt me. Vivian saved me, I corrected. She provided me with stability, education, and self-respect. She taught me that love is demonstrated through actions, not merely words. We loved you, my mother insisted. We were unwell. Depression is a genuine illness. Your father's gambling was an addiction. We needed assistance, not judgment. I was 13 years old, I reminded her, my voice finally cracking. I needed parents, not justifications. Do you have any idea what it was like to wake up and find you both missing? To wait by the phone for days, hoping you would call? To search the apartment for hints about where you had gone? My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I checked the mailbox every day for months. I continued, years of repressed words finally spilling out. I kept thinking you would at least send a birthday card or a Christmas gift, some indication that you remembered I was alive. We thought about you every day, my mother said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thoughts without actions are meaningless, I replied. Livia never once told me she loved me. Not a single time in 15 years. But she was there every day for doctor appointments, school plays, nightmares, and college applications. She built trust through consistency. We are here now, my father said, his tone softening to the salesman's pitch I remembered from my childhood. We can develop a relationship moving forward. Support each other as a family. You are here now because Livia passed away wealthy, I stated bluntly. If she had died poor, would you have even bothered to find me? Their silence was answer enough. Lawson presented the private investigator reports to me. I remarked, you were aware of my whereabouts for 15 years. You opted not to reach out until there was a financial motive. That's not fair, my mother objected. We felt ashamed. We didn't know how to confront you after our actions. Yet, you found the bravery to come forward right after discovering a multi-million-dollar inheritance. I noticed the timing was quite interesting. My father's expression turned stern again. You have no idea what we endured living in poverty while my sister enjoyed wealth that should have been distributed among our whole family. Vivian created that wealth on her own. I retorted. She toiled for 16 hours a day for many years. What exactly did you do to earn a share? I am her brother, he yelled. And your father? Just because of biology, you think you deserve something, I replied. Aunt Livia's practical influence was clear in my answer. You can't neglect your responsibilities for 15 years and then show up expecting rewards. My mother sank into an antique chair, crying dramatically. How did you become so unfeeling? This isn't how we raised you. You didn't raise me, I reminded her. You left before the job was completed. Vivian took care of it. Security lights blinked outside as a patrol car entered the driveway. I had asked Lawson to set up regular checks on the house, anticipating this confrontation. That will be the police, I told them. You should leave now. This isn't over, my father warned, gripping my arm. You think you've triumphed, but we can complicate your life significantly. We can share stories about that woman that would damage her precious reputation. I broke free from his hold. Every threat you make is being recorded, I stated, pointing to the security camera in the corner of the foyer. Vivian had installed them years ago after your initial attempt to extort money from her. His face drained of color as he grasped the implications. Anything he said or did now could be used against him in court. Come on, he muttered to my mother. She isn't worth the hassle. Those words belittling me as just an inconvenience instead of a daughter truly confirmed everything. This situation was never about reconciliation, it was always about money. As they made their way to the door, my mother glanced back. You will regret this when you find yourself alone, with nothing but money to console you. Family means everything. I agree. I mentioned that Livia was my family. You were simply biological donors who failed to uphold your commitments. After they departed, I observed through the window as a police officer halted them in the driveway. A brief, tense exchange took place before they drove off. I collapsed onto the floor, feeling the adrenaline fade away. For 15 years, I had carried a wound that never fully healed, yearning for an explanation that would clarify their abandonment. Now I had my answer, and while it brought pain, it also provided clarity. An hour later, Lawson called to check on me. He informed me that they had been officially served with the restraining order. They cannot legally approach you within 500 feet or contact you directly. They claimed it wasn't over. I warned him that they could create issues. Empty threats, he reassured me. The documentation we possess would render any legal challenge pointless and could make them criminally liable. They were compensated to relinquish custody and then attempted to extract more money repeatedly. No court would look kindly on that history. After we ended the call, I roamed through Aunt Livia's house, seeing it with fresh eyes. The formal dining room where she taught me proper table manners, the study where we reviewed business reports together, the garden where she sometimes joined me for morning coffee in comfortable silence. In her bedroom, which I hadn't entered since her passing, I discovered a small wooden box on her nightstand that I had never noticed before. Inside was a collection of items that left me stunned. Report cards, school photos, and newspaper clippings showcasing the academic awards I received, along with the program from my college graduation where my name was highlighted. Beneath these cherished mementos lay another sealed envelope addressed to me. In contrast to the formal letter presented by Lawson, this note was penned on personal stationery. It began simply with, "Aurora, I have never been adept at expressing my emotions. My upbringing and generation discouraged such displays, but as I confront my mortality, I find myself regretting this limitation. Therefore, let me clearly state what should have been expressed years ago. I love you not out of obligation or duty, but because of who you are. Your resilience, intelligence, and ability to show kindness despite early betrayals have been the greatest joy of my life to witness. I did not give you life, but it has been my privilege to watch you live." The legal adoption papers were signed years ago, not for your protection, but for my peace of mind. I wanted the world to recognize you as my daughter in every meaningful way. Be well, be wise. Be happy, Mom. That final word, which was never spoken between us in life, opened something within me. I wept that night, not for the parents who returned with selfish intentions, but for the one who had never claimed the title yet had fully earned it. 6 months have passed since that last confrontation with my biological parents. According to Lawson, they returned to Arizona after making one unsuccessful attempt to reach out to the local newspaper with revelations about Aunt Livia. The editor, a longtime friend of Vivian's, immediately contacted Lawson instead. "The house feels like mine now. I have repainted some rooms, rearranged the furniture, and added personal touches that reflect my own taste while honoring Vivian's elegant sensibilities. The formal dining room now serves as my home office, with large monitors sitting somewhat incongruously on the antique mahogany table where Vivian once hosted business dinners. The business is flourishing under my guidance. I have introduced several modernization strategies that Vivian had previously resisted, especially in the areas of online marketing and inventory management. Our online presence has grown significantly, and we have launched 2 new locations. The employees who respected Vivian have now transferred that loyalty to me, with many noting that they can see her influence in my management approach. One of the most significant initiatives has been the establishment of the Vivian Hughes Foundation, aimed at reconnecting families. Using part of the inheritance, I founded a non-profit organization that assists children who have faced abandonment or family separation. We offer therapy, educational opportunities, and transitional housing for young adults aging out of foster care. Through the foundation, I have encountered others with experiences similar to mine. Some have found reconciliation with their biological families, while others have formed chosen families with friends and mentors. Each journey is distinct, but the common thread is the human need for stable, consistent relationships. My own therapy has progressed, now focusing less on the initial abandonment and more on processing the complex emotions brought up by my parents' return and their true motivations. Dr. Freeman has helped me realize that closure can sometimes come in unexpected ways. The fantasy of reconciliation often plays a role in the healing process, as she explained in a recent session, but the reality rarely aligns with that fantasy. Sometimes, the most significant growth occurs when we accept what cannot be changed and instead build something new. 3 months ago, I received a letter from my mother. Unlike our previous exchanges, this one had no requests or demands. It was simply an acknowledgement of wrongdoing and an expression of regret that felt genuinely sincere for the first time. I have not yet responded, and I may never do so. The letter remains in my desk drawer, neither rejected nor accepted, as I contemplate what, if anything, I desire from that connection. I have discovered an unexpected sense of comfort in relationships that I once took for granted. Mrs. Grayson, Livia's housekeeper, continues to visit twice a week. Over time, she has shared stories about Vivian from before my arrival, helping me to see a fuller picture of the woman who became my true mother. Recently, Mrs. Grayson confided that Vivian was terrified when you first came. She had never wanted children and never believed she had the temperament for motherhood. On the first night after your arrival, I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m., researching child development books online. These insights into Vivian's private worries and efforts deeply touch me. She took on a responsibility she never sought, yet she fulfilled it with her characteristic thoroughness and commitment. Lawson has also become a regular part of my life, joining me for dinner each month and providing guidance on both business and personal matters. As my godfather, he has taken on a more uncle-like role than his previously formal demeanor suggested was possible. Livia would be proud. He recently told me, as we reviewed the Foundation's first quarterly report, that he admired not just your business acumen but also your resilience. She constantly worried that your early experiences would leave you bitter or untrusting. Instead, you have transformed that experience into a way to help others. After putting romance aside during Vivian's illness and the ensuing legal complications, I have started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I find myself approaching relationships with clearer boundaries and expectations. Vivian's example taught me that love should be shown through consistent actions, not just expressed in convenient moments. The most significant change has been internal. The question that haunted me for 15 years, why did they leave me, no longer holds the same weight. I now understand that their departure reflected their limitations, not my worth. More importantly, I realized that Vivian's choice to stay, to commit, and to show up day after day was the more significant decision. Last weekend, I went to visit Vivian's grave, bringing along fresh flowers. The headstone is a beautiful black granite, featuring simple lettering just as she wanted. After the adoption revelation, I had a small addition made, the word mother engraved beneath her name. As I stood there, it struck me that family isn't just about blood or legal ties, but about the countless small choices we make every day. Who shows up? Who remains? Who speaks hard truths? Who fosters safety instead of chaos? Livia taught me that true wealth isn't just about money. Real abundance comes from integrity, from honoring commitments, and from trust that is built slowly and carefully maintained. These are the values I carry forward as her most precious legacy. The inheritance she left me was much more than just property and investments. She provided me with a way to live with dignity and purpose. She demonstrated that chosen family can often be stronger than biological ties. And she showed me that love doesn't need to be frequently expressed to be profoundly felt. I may never know if my biological parents truly regret their actions or if they simply missed the financial support. Ultimately, their motivations are less significant than I once believed. What truly matters is the life I choose to create moving forward, the relationships I cultivate, and the legacy I establish. Have you ever had to rethink your understanding of family? Do you think that blood relations automatically deserve forgiveness, or should relationships be earned through consistent care and respect? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more real-life experiences. And if you know someone dealing with family issues who might find solace in this journey, please share this video with them. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story, and remember that sometimes the family we choose can bring more healing than the family we are born into.